right, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started in the interest of time. Thank you, everyone, for joining. My name is Rochna Golani, and I'm going to be presenting a session on how do you build skills and capabilities for the AWS cloud. And joining me later today in this presentation is going to be Bruce Vinstant, who is the technology strategist at Stanford University, and also Brett Weaver, who is the software developer at Intuit, to share their stories of what they've done to build skills and capabilities for the cloud. So I'm part of the AWS training and certification team, focusing on how do we build learning and certifications for making the most out of AWS. But before we get started, as Andy was talking about in his keynote, different customers have different paths on how they get to the cloud adoption. And what I'd like to do is get started with each one of you telling me a little bit about what you're doing. And so we're not going to go around the room and doing that, because that would consume all the 45 minutes. But what I'd love to do is have each one of you take out your cell phones. And I'm not going to ask you to turn that off either. But let's actually do something with it. So we're going to do a live poll. And I want you to tell me, using your phone, how you're using AWS. And I have 4 things in there. Whether you're just experimenting, still trying to figure out how I want to use it, you're using it in some sort of a limited way with some applications in the cloud. It's broad use in your environment, including production apps, or finally, all in, right? So go ahead and text that code, whatever one it is, to 2 2s and 2 3s, 2 2 3 3 3, and tell us a little bit about how you're using AWS. We'll give it just a few minutes for those that took a bit to type that in. All right, we'll keep this going. We can come back and look at the screen one more time to see what's going on. But kind of exactly what I was hoping to see here is that we have customers in any of these phases, right? As Andy was talking about, that you can have customers that are using AWS in any and all variations of this adoption journey. And clearly, we have a lot of customers in this session today that are using it in some limited way for, with some applications on the cloud, but also a large number of them that are using it for, with a very broad use and in production. And a good number are also in here for all in. And the whole reason for this discussion is really to understand that regardless of the adoption curve we are in, for AWS, building skills and capabilities that allow us to do this continuous innovation is critical. So with that, I'm going to go in and start off with, so we did that. So I'm going to start talking, we'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the cloud skills and demand that we're seeing and the shift in the IT paradigm. We're going to talk about the technology adoption patterns. And then we'll discuss the different kinds of things that you can do in order to get skilled and capable to exploit the value of the cloud with training paths, certifications. And then, like I said, I'm going to have 2 guest speakers from Stanford University and Intuit who are going to share with us their stories of what they've done to build skills and capabilities. So here's a great chart of why build skills and capabilities. And this is a chart from Indy.com. And for those of you who are maybe not from the US, may not be as familiar with it, but a great job search website. And as you can see, in the last few years, there has been a 2,500% growth in jobs for cloud skills, right? And to add on to that, in 2012 alone, according to an IDC research, we had 1.7 million jobs that went unfilled for cloud skills. And not just that, it's growing annually at 26%. So by 2015, we expect to see about 7 million cloud jobs, cloud skills-related jobs. And specifically, when you look at what these customers, these employers, our customers are looking for, is people that have the skills and capabilities to do the migration, to understand how do you integrate with the cloud, to build that hybrid cloud that we just heard of in the keynote. So very clearly, also as mentioned in the keynote, this technology of cloud is providing a shift in IT and is really creating a whole new set of opportunities, everything from healthcare to games. We just saw that with the awesome story about the baseball game this morning. And what it's doing is essentially allowing the customers to innovate, or our customers to innovate on behalf of their businesses at rapid speed, right? So we think about resources not really being a barrier in how they can go ahead and innovate, right? And allowing to get applications that reach your customers in different way, be aware of their context, their location context with mobility. All these new things that you can do in this cloud with this shift, because the customers are getting there, it's important to understand that we need to build skills that sort of match up to this. And so the first and foremost thing I'd say that's important in building these skills is developing a culture of learning. I mean, just today we heard N number of services that got announced, right? And so what we knew of yesterday has changed today based on just how many more things got introduced. So if skill is not something that's ongoing, that skills development is not ongoing, change might happen without us. I heard a partner yesterday who said that every time he does an interview for a candidate, he asks him or her, what did you learn in the last week? Which I thought was pretty interesting because he expects this person to be constantly learning and this culture of learning that is there. It's also about up-leveling and being closer to your businesses. Communication and collaboration is extremely critical in this new world of IT, right? Because now you're not managing the infrastructure. You're not spending time doing anything that is undifferentiated. You're adding value to the business. So developers and operations folks need to stay closely tied in to the business. And that is an important skill to have. Talking about continuous deployment, continuous integration, right, with a culture of DevOps, included in learning is critical. So how's all of this going to happen, right? There is a huge gap in what I shared earlier, and just in terms of the numbers of number of jobs that are out there, and this capability that the cloud is providing to us. We need to bridge this gap in terms of adding more skills to be able to do that and innovate on behalf of our customers. So all of this is not going to happen overnight, right? And every customer has each one of you, as you showed in the poll, have your own journey into getting there. And Andy shared this morning, where most customers start off with dev and test, right? They're slowly deploying. They're taking some of their applications or the development and test environments and leveraging AWS for that, migrating into some applications, ideally new applications that will leveraging these benefits of the cloud and bringing them into AWS. Or stage 3, where they're bringing in most of their applications, mission-critical applications, into the cloud. And finally, an all-in. So we don't have data centers. We're not in the business of managing data centers, but are there for providing value to our customers. And this is a great example of a media company that took exactly this journey. We heard about many, many more customers this morning in the keynote of what they did to get to the cloud, right? Started with something really small, started off with new applications or new capabilities, new products, new projects into that phase 2, going into building a whole bunch of applications and running their mission-critical applications on stage 3, and then finally an all-in, right? 75% of their data centers in the cloud. So this is where I want to start talking about what can we do to get there? How can we develop skills and capabilities? And I want to go ahead and introduce what training and certification team has to offer in terms of getting our customers quickly to adopting these things. So you can expand your skills with AWS training and certification. We offer a whole bunch of training courses, online videos, labs just to experiment with things, and then also certification that allows you to validate your skills in the cloud. So within training, we've identified three roles that affect this change to adopting in the cloud. The role of an architect that is really there to create that business plan of moving to the cloud, right? Determining the migration strategies, figuring out what those design plans are going to be for how do we get to the cloud. So definitely a technologist, but in the role of an architect. An operations person that is going to help provision these cloud environments, automate the implementations, think about backup, DR, monitoring, high availability, also troubleshooting your production environments. And then, of course, the developer that is actually building these applications in the cloud, right? Using the SDKs, using the APIs, and working through it. But as this technology has evolved, the question is, what is DevOps, and what is it, and why is it, right? And DevOps really is just it's a culture, it's a movement that's happening that brings in closer collaboration between the developing teams and the operations team. And we heard Andy talk about new services today that AWS is announcing to sort of move this space and allow for faster deployment of services. So this is not something we can buy, right? This is something we have to do. And it's a cultural change, again, where we're trying to bring in these two organizations or these two teams together to be able to provision things faster, to be automating things, to be deploying faster, and getting to, ultimately, a quicker way to respond to your customers. So with AWS, we are offering training, and we offer a whole bunch of instructor-led training, but we also offer labs and videos that I talked about. And the biggest benefit of using this training is not only that it helps you quickly adopt the technology, get there as quickly as possible, but that all of this is done with the subject matter experts. So we work very closely with our own solution architects, our own developers in building this training and in building the labs so that we can provide you with the same best practices information that these architects are leveraging internally. So if you're just getting started, so those of you who said we are still experimenting and just figuring out what these various services are, we offer a series of instructional videos and labs, and it's literally just an animated video that gets you going with what the service is, what its capabilities are, and together it's packaged up with a great hands-on lab that allows you to get immediate experience with what this service is. If you haven't used this, at the conference, we're offering not just these introduction labs, but a series of all the labs that we have right here at the conference for free through Friday. So if you haven't tried that, I would definitely encourage you to go get a feel for it and see how you can use that in your organization to build skills and capabilities. A series of self-paced labs. Most of the technologists like to learn by doing, not sitting in a class and hearing a PowerPoint like this one. So they're wanting to do things, and this is why we offer a series of self-paced labs all coupled together nicely into use cases, so you can go ahead and take them all in a series and earn a badge at the end of it. We offer this program through our vendor, through a partner that we work with, Cloud VLab. So this is on QuickLab, and again, like I said, each and every one of this is available for free at the conference in the hands-on lab room. For our training courses, again, depending on where you are, whether you're just getting started, there is an AWS Essentials course, 1 day. Again, each one of these led by subject matter experts who've been in the industry, who've been deploying, migrating, managing production level environments. And then for each of the 3 roles that I talked about, architecting, developer, or operations, we offer detailed 3-day instructor-led classes with hands-on labs that allow you to really understand that role and how do you operate or develop or architect in the cloud. At the next level for these courses, there is also an advanced option, so that if you are in that stage 3 or stage 4 where you're really thinking about optimizing and efficiency and doing things in a new way versus just a lift and shift, then those are the courses for you, because you can learn a lot from these advanced courses. And finally, a big data specialty course that gets you started with big data and analytics in the cloud. And so for those of you who are not familiar with big data but want to give it a try, we also offer a free big data fundamentals course that is online and available to everyone. So coming back to making this all a reality, to where I am in my journey for cloud adoption, and where does this AWS training that we have been talking about fit in? And really, regardless of where you are, right, if you're just getting started, the Architecting on AWS course is a great first step, because you want to think about how am I going to design, what am I going to do, and take that first application and move it over to the cloud. But if you've been there, you have a handful of applications or more that are now running in the cloud, that's when you could really start investing more and developing skills around operations or developer, and then also considering advanced operations. But remember, these are all point in time. Your employees or yourself, depending on what interests you about this session, this is not it. This is a beginning in the journey. And as I said earlier, the key here is really to be continuously evolving, right? And doing things with reading online documentation, or continuously going back to do those self-paced labs, because it allows you to just pick on the things that you were interested in and then build skills on that. We bring all of this to you. You don't necessarily have to come to us. We offer training through our partners worldwide. And we also offer on-site classes. So if you have a series of people in your own company that want to take this training, we can have AWS or one of our partners come to you and deliver this training. And I'm going to talk briefly about certification and what we have to offer over there. So for the same 3 roles, the architect, the developer, and the operations role, we also have certifications, and this is really just to validate your skills in the cloud, right? Think about, I have this proven capability, I have done deployments in production, and this certification is going to allow me to, with an exam test, prove my skills so that it can be known in the marketplace. And again, we have 2 levels there, the associate level, which is just getting started, but then we also have a professional level to really prove your experience over multiple years of deploying production environments. As of Friday, we've just launched our professional level exams for a DevOps engineer. And again, if you are interested, if you've considered doing this before, and haven't done it, we are offering testing on-site through Friday, so you should consider signing up for any one of these and then prove your skills and capabilities. So as an individual, it's definitely one about industry visibility, it's about recognition, it's about credibility with your partners, with your customers. But if you're an employer, you might want to consider hiring with this in your job descriptions, right? Look for those people who've already invested in building their skills for the cloud and are now AWS certified. You can also consider building skills within your team, because you know when you're hiring these certified individuals, they have proven their skills, and so you're reducing your operational risk, but also potentially exploring new things that you were not able to do without them. And finally, taking any kind of exam is kind of hard sometimes. It's just getting through those nerves of taking an exam. So we provide a bunch of preparation materials, everything from our own trainings that we talked about, to sample questions, to practice exams, to white papers that you can read in order to get comfortable with the technology before you go ahead and get certified. So with that, I've talked about the why, I've talked about the offerings that we have. Let's bring it all together, and I'd like to introduce to you Bruce Vincent from Stanford University, who's been working with the AWS technology for 4 years, but about 2 in production, and has also co-authored a paper for best practices for the higher ed institutions. So Bruce, come on up. So Bruce, thank you very much for joining us today. I'd love for you to tell us a little bit about what Stanford was trying to achieve with the AWS technology, and what role did training have to play in all of this?
Sure. So we obviously had some, well, just to sort of set the landscape, a place like Stanford is a lot more like an academic city and a research city than it is about one single focused business, right? So it's a brand that covers a lot of greatness, but we have everything from general ledger to genomics, right? So and every kind of discipline as you might imagine. So there were a lot of roles actually that the training played. A big part of it was to basically dispel a lot of FUD about the cloud early on. I know a few years ago there was a lot of skepticism about use of the cloud. Probably still in some areas there is. But basically bringing some key stakeholders, and I mean technical stakeholders in this case, into a training environment where it was on site, it was Stanford folks, people that they didn't necessarily, they knew about, but they didn't take the time to get introduced across the campus and in different disciplines. And it was a place for them to come in there and think in a Stanford context what these technologies meant. So one part of it was to dispel the FUD. A big part of it was also to sort of show our especially technical lead folks that we really wanted to invest in, that we were investing in them, that the future included them, and we were demonstrating to them that we were getting them up to speed with what we saw as a very strategic play. And so those two things were extremely successful in the training investments. I think also, when I think about the landscape of technology training and sort of the evolution of a lot of our senior technical folks, you really start to differentiate the folks that have a systems view of things. And so I see this as an enormous opportunity to have some folks who probably in the past were doing systems administration, and they were doing some development. They were in a smaller unit where they could do the whole stack. It sort of brings them back into that situation where they can see the entirety of what a systems view is. And so I've created a new role of systems engineer, for lack of a better title, to sort of differentiate this kind of new role. And it's really, when you go into the console the first time, it's really pretty overwhelming if you realize what you're looking at, that you really have just an entire data center and multiple of them all over the world. Now, as of probably the last year, year and a half, what's really been the new phenomena is the investment of the emergence of the DevOps culture, right? So obviously the cloud is just a perfect vehicle for that as well. So.
Great. So how many people, like, did everybody go through the same training? What happened in terms of identifying the roles? Did that align with what AWS training offered?
Yeah, so it started relatively modestly. We really probably sent 1 or 2 folks just to sort of see what it was about. And those were off-site. They were usually either up in Seattle or you know, local, but not on campus. And then so we did the first sort of foray of an on-campus. We did 15 folks with 3-day architect training. And by the way, that's all the formal training that we've been sort of offering from the center has really been around the architecting. So I think I'm on the left of your maturity evolution curve. Yeah. So we got to get with it. But anyway, we started with 15 folks, and those were mostly in central IT with also some information security folks in there as well. And I would say about half it really stuck with, and it really landed with those folks, and they became real evangelists for us across campus in different, and like I said, in different departments. So, you know, a lot of these folks support either administrative computing activities or some academic or research activities. So all told, we've done about 60 through the central training, sort of coordinated training. There's obviously been other folks that have taken some as part of a conference they've gone to or just online. So it's been great feedback, actually. I will say one thing, a learning, is that you want to send folks that are up to it. I mean, in attitude, but also, you know, it's not for folks who don't understand the basics of technology. So, and you certainly want to have a mix of use cases among the folks you send. I mean, I think that probably the greatest thing about the going to an offsite training sometimes is that you meet people from different industries and all of that. Well, at a place like Stanford, we can do that too, as long as you get enough of a cross-section of folks with different use cases.
Right. So Bruce, tell us what's next. What else do you see happening in the coming months, in the coming year for adoption, and what else do you think you didn't want to invest in terms of training?
Yeah, I think on the operations side, I think I'd like to see a lot more understanding of how to optimize for the cloud, and probably there are a lot of what might be somewhat esoteric for some developers, some subjects like key management, like was mentioned today with the new services that got announced. Those things are, and encryption, those things are actually reasonably hard to do really well, especially in an operational situation. We've certainly put applications from production out there, but they've been things that have been, you know, either very, you know, stateless or pretty readily moved, right? There's some other workloads that I want to move out there, but I don't want to do it before our operations folks really feel like it's bulletproof. So there's a whole bunch of things around monitoring and unit testing and continuous integration that we're still working through. But I think that training could accelerate that. It certainly accelerated us a lot out of the gate on the design side.
Great. Anything else you'd want our customers to hear in terms of getting through this journey more quickly in a rapid way to be able to service their customers better?
No, not really. I mean, I just would say that, you know, you really want to look for the folks that respond to the training and really start to sort of flower in this environment, because there's so many possibilities. You need folks that can sort of look at it as not a bunch of chaos and a bunch of new services and everything's changing out from under me, but really folks that understand that there's this sort of flowering of service offerings and technologies, and you know, cloud is here to stay, and you know, you really want to be able to have your folks move with that. I mean, certainly being in the Bay Area, in the Palo Alto area, it's really tough to recruit and retain folks for that area. So we really want to, you know, we really want to see our existing staff move forward with where we're going strategically.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for joining us. So just to summarize, you know, so they definitely used a lot of architecting training to help migrate their workloads, you know, trying to bring in everybody on the same page with on-site training. But I really liked what Bruce said in that you want to retain the people, and sometimes building these skills, investing in the people is a great way to retain and build that culture of learning. So this morning in the keynote, we heard Taylor Stansberry from Intuit, who talked to us about their journey into the cloud and what they are doing and partnering with AWS to even help us come up with some of these new services and features in our existing services. Now I'd like to bring up on stage another customer. Brett Weaver from Intuit is going to join us. Brett's been a software developer, and he has been working with the AWS technology for the last 4 years, building tools and partnering with AWS to really focus on skills development for the folks at Intuit. So Brett, thank you for coming.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and so tell us about what was going on, when did you get started, and how did you get this adoption going in terms of skills and capabilities?
No, definitely. So my interest in training actually spawned from originally when I first started working in public cloud in AWS. My interest on, because I kind of was training, me and a small group of select engineers who had a lot of passion around it, back when AWS didn't really have some of the sponsorship and weight behind it does now, as you saw with Taylor. We were the training department. There was a few of us. We put a little bit of stuff together. We went out to the select groups who were dipping their toes in and starting to see the all the potential and the possibility that we've all now seen today with AWS. So we spent a lot of time really building out our training materials, and of course very quickly realized that's not going to scale for a company that has 3,000 developers. I was flying around, I went to India, I came back, and then I realized, I'm like, okay, I've hit like 40 people, that's not gonna work. So started working with the AWS training services, and we really spent a lot of time developing a curriculum that made sense for Intuit and the way we used AWS.
Great. Could you share some numbers in terms of how many people? Taylor shared some stats this morning in terms of your company overall, and so what have you guys done in terms of training, and how did the roles play out? Yeah,
definitely. So Intuit has about 3,000 developers around the world, primarily in North America, but also in India and various other countries around the world. Last I heard to date, we've trained about just under 1,000 people, I believe, across, and we've used basically the 3 roles that you discussed in your presentation. Those lined up very well with what we wanted our engineers and our developers to learn. One of the big learnings we had with those 3 roles is we did have to tweak them a little as far as how they fit into the Intuit ecosystem. So one of the beautiful things about AWS services is they give you small primitives, they give you building blocks which can be used and assembled to build all sorts of wonderful things in all sorts of different ways. Most any enterprise is likely going to have a different way that they assemble those primitives, those building blocks. One of our big focuses was ensuring consistency across our different development organizations as far as how they used the various AWS services, how that they use them to comprise Intuit applications in a consistent fashion across the company. Kind of like what Bruce said with Stanford, Intuit is not one application, it's not one company. It's kind of a house of brands. It's TurboTax, it's QuickBooks, and there's varying levels of consistency across them. And we were trying to really use training across the company as a way to enforce a greater level of consistency in how applications were built and deployed.
Great. So one of the questions, since you guys you've been doing this for the last 4 years, investing in training and stuff, I want to hear from you if everything turned out kind of how you imagined it 4 years ago, and how the roles evolved, or the training, and sort of how quickly you migrated. How did that play out?
Yeah, great question. So pretty much nothing turned out like I was hoping. As a software developer, when I first started using AWS, I'm like, oh my God, everyone is just going to move to this. There's no reason not to. You'd be insane. It costs pennies. It's at your fingertips. They've got the operational rigor. They understand how developers think. This is amazing. Some applications were able to make very quick moves. And then what we just started running into is in a company like Intuit that's been around for 30 years and has large established applications, very prominent brands, you see both technical and non-technical challenges to things migrating to the AWS cloud. And I just wanted to go in and tell TurboTax, pick it up and move it. And of course, other people would say, that's probably not going to work, Brett. And after a while, I realized they were correct, begrudgingly. And we took more of a, staggered and incremental approach to moving our various applications into the cloud. And, one of the big pieces I learned from it is you have to kind of, especially as an engineer, compromise a little bit, and sometimes the purity and the approach you're going to take. You might want to go and say, oh my God, why wouldn't we just move to S3? It's infinitely scalable, it's got 11 nines, et cetera. That doesn't always align with the culture and the established processes and the established technologies that an existing application may have. So be ready to compromise and also learn as you go along in your journey to AWS.
Great. Tell us a little bit more in terms of what's next. What else do you see happening for what is happening for continuous development of these developers that you have trained, or operations people that you've trained, and how are you handling that at Intuit?
Yep. So we're continuing with the 3 tracks, and we're continuing to offer them. And when they first started, the 3 tracks we have at Intuit were actually some of the most popular training Intuit's ever offered. They got more people signing up than for any other technology that we've offered in Intuit training. We're going to be offering the advanced classes, and I think they're also putting together a security course that's coming in the future. And then another piece that we're going to be focusing on is I've got like 6 new services that I need to go and understand now and see how those are going to fit in. And I think there is going to be a large, they're of course going to have a large impact as every year at reInvent new stuff comes out, and it forces us to rethink how are we going to integrate those into our environment? How do they complement or supplement existing services that Intuit or AWS has built? And really figuring out how do we want to put together a consistent message for those different engineering groups and how they leverage those services.
Great. Thank you. That was a fantastic journey. They're continuing to invest in their employees, and as you saw from the keynote, making a significant impact with their customers. So Brett, thank you again for coming and sharing your story with us.
Thank you very much.
So we've heard from our 2 customers. We've heard their stories. We've heard a lot of other stories at the keynote this morning, and I'm sure you'll get to do that for the rest of the conference. So I'd like to summarize and say that skills evolvement for cloud adoption is an ongoing thing. It's a continuous education cycle. You have to start somewhere, and I think AWS training can really partner with you guys to get you quickly started and adopting. Right? If you're an individual in the crowd that's trying to learn for your skills and capabilities, there's tracks that we make available for you. Take the training that best suits your needs, right? If you are one that likes to learn with hands-on labs, we offer a series of those. If you'd like to sit in a class and learn from an instructor and their best practices, we offer that. Also, if you are looking to have that mark with the proven capability, definitely look to get certified. If you already have a couple of years under your belt and you don't have the certification, now's the time to do it right here at reInvent. And for those of you who are looking to do this or attending this session to understand how do you better enable your teams, it's a culture that has to change of learning, of getting skills built within the team, and for that ongoing skills that I talked about. And also, and also building that culture and retaining those really smart people that you have on your team, right? Both Brett and Bruce shared with us that they picked these people that was this all-star team. They picked the best of their team, had them take the training, get certified, and then sort of become the evangelist in the company, within the company for cloud adoption. And that's how they got there quickly. So with that, I'm going to open it up for any questions, and I'd like Bruce and Brett to join me. If you have any questions on, for any one of us, we'll be happy to answer that. Anything?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
Brett, yes.
Brett.
Yeah.
So, as a software developer in the organization, how did you influence IT operation-wise to move to the DevOps model?
Yeah, that's a great.
If you have IT operations and you have security, if you guys have application security on the
Yep, yeah, it's a great question. So it was, the question was, as a developer, how did we influence our organization, both in IT, software engineering, security, to embrace a DevOps model? And I'd say we still are. We're still working through it. It's a journey. Everyone is excited about the cloud, and the more applications that go to it, the more excitement there is. I think what we're seeing now is where it's first started in the software development space, that's now permeating out into IT and security, and they're really taking another look at how they can change the way they work and embrace, a DevOps culture and that model. I think for us, a big part of it was partially training, and one of the things we said up front in our training was, no matter what your role is here, it's going to change. If you're working in IT, you're probably going to have to go deeper into software development. If you're working in security, you're going to have to understand the cloud, of course, which has its own complexities. And if you're a software developer, you have to really architect your applications and understand your infrastructure in a way that you didn't previously have to necessarily when you weren't running in the cloud. So I think for us, it was a big thing that helped was actually talking to people about that and getting the conversation started.
Yeah, so I find it interesting because you have guys like IT and security that's more infrastructure, but now they're going to have to move up the stack, right?
Yep.
To applications.
And yeah, it definitely is. It's a huge adjustment, and we're seeing, and then we're a little ways into it now, a few years. We're actually seeing where it's definitely different people move at different speeds, but in general, people are able to make the jump in different directions if given proper guidance and support from their leadership. In general, we've seen people be able to make that jump, which is it's a great thing to see, and it makes for a better place for everybody to work in.
Yeah, I think especially with the keynote announcement this morning, you guys are going to be going all in.
Yes.
So there's more compelling story for
I used to say stuff like that, and people would think I'm crazy. Like, Intuit's not going to go on the cloud. No, he's up there, so that's a great thing to see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question. So I'm sure that Intuit is now probably considering private cloud versus public cloud.
When you say private cloud, you're referring to like a on-premise solution? Yes. Yes. So we haven't considered the private cloud. We've considered many private clouds, and they're commingled in our data centers right now, and we're continuing to invest in them. But the focus is going forward, and Taylor's made this very clear to us as an engineering team, is public cloud is the priority, AWS being our chosen partner. That being said, I don't foresee a future where we're not going to have a private cloud or some sort of on-premise solution anytime, but people are encouraged, new applications starting out, go to AWS, host there as your primary and your secondary, even if there's nothing precluding you from doing that, even though we do have a private cloud available as well. We're like every enterprise. We love building private clouds. So,
Yeah.
Yes.
The question is for Bruce.
Yeah.
So Bruce, you mentioned there are 15 folks that went to with the on-site training, and you said
Initially.
like really stopped using that list. I'm guessing the other half maybe not as much.
Well, the other half feel like they missed the boat with the cool kids, I think, a little bit. And it's, I mean, some folks don't make any technology jump, right? I mean, they have to have the interest themselves to kind of move forward. So.
I was wondering if the folks that didn't support, didn't stick as well, how much of it was due to personality versus their legacy roles in the company?
I think it's mostly personality, honestly. Because I don't think these concepts are, to start with, all that. I mean, there's definitely a gradation within cloud as well. I think that the tough part is that there's not necessarily a narrow band of a storage administrator role or a person who patches operating systems or any of that stuff into the future in general, independent of the cloud. I mean, we're doing Docker and CoreOS and all these different things that are basically making portability and at-will deployment a reality, whether it's public or private platform. And so people are going up in the technology's going up in the stack, and we want to do more value-added things as technologists anyway. So I think it's mostly people who are predisposed to and are curious to stay current. Those are the people you really want to emerge, right? And actually, a lot of them are begging for this in a way because they haven't had that opportunity. It was sort of something that got them into a technology role, but then they got kind of pigeonholed in a specific operational role or development role in a narrow focus. This completely blows that out of the water. I mean, there's just all kinds of possibilities. People can play with technologies now in EDW or analytics or things that it was out of their domain, and so they didn't really have an opportunity to play with it, and now they do.
Yeah, that's true. That's the good side of it, is that there's different people, of course, approach it differently, but there is a large subset of people who see it as an opportunity that they can now not just work on a single discipline and really excel and branch out in different directions.
Other questions? Yes.
So I'm interested from the opposite, and I run SaaS and hosting and infrastructure services for our company, and on my side is the devs who have been more compartmentalized and developed, and it changes all the ways that they have to code and things they don't necessarily want to know about infrastructure, but we want them to know, right? Because all the problems come up mail or messaging or encryption, or hard coding things they never should have hard code because that makes them unworkable. I'm wondering how you went about the politics of creating consensus.
Yeah, it's a great.
Devs, infrastructure, and business units who often are intractable because they don't really think this out to customers because customers lag behind
Yeah.
technologists in an area that should have.
It's a great question. What we saw is, like you said, many of those things are the last thing developers think about, and they can somewhat, in a traditional data center and a traditional software approach, they can be after the fact sort of things, or even somewhat delayed, and that can't do that in AWS. If you're going to truly handle it and run an AWS, auto scaling, take advantage of putting all of your data out there, you have to have encryption up front. You have to have stateless applications. You have to have all of those things that make an application fit in the cloud. One thing we started with that helped it into it is we put together a set of principles. We called them our cloud-ready principles, and it was 10 or 12 very, very high-level statements about an application that people should, when people are developing, that they should adhere to. Things like your application must be stateless, your application should encrypt data in transit at rest. These very kind of broad things to get in people's mind, and then from there, we drilled down into different places in those and talked about how to implement that and both why it's important in the cloud. I think setting that out, though there's no easy solution, because as an engineer, I totally understand. I have the way I build things and it's perfect, and I have to force myself not to do it that way, so it takes time. But I think that was the tool we used to at least start that conversation with people. And then the second thing we saw is when you get developers, when they release stuff into the cloud, most people will probably start down a similar journey where they have their small development or less critical applications going first. People will start to realize as they work in that, hey, even though I love developing my application using this approach or this technology or et cetera, I'll start feeling the pain once I get it out there. So I think that's a great way to get people acclimated, is just to start them out and find that specific application you can launch early and get that experience. Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Great idea. Great idea.
Certainly.
So in the interest of time, Bruce, Brett, and I are going to be available at the East Alcove, and we'll take more questions. But we'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. Please do tell us about how you liked this session, what you didn't like, so we make sure we bring the best to you. So thank you again, everyone.